Tom and Jerry and the Magic Ring is a 2002 direct-to-video film starring the cat and mouse duo. From what I can tell, it's widely forgotten that it was the next film in line to follow 1992's Tom and Jerry, the movie, which was considered a box office bomb. At this point, Tom and Jerry had existed for over 50 years and had been on a slow decline, so I'm not surprised that the follow-up that occurred 10 years later was scaled back from a theatrical release to one on home video. What does surprise me is that this follow-up film has a tie-in game. Why? Don't movie tie-in games generally exist as a form of promotion while the movie is still in theaters? What kind of timeline are we in that you actually release a tie-in video game for a movie that isn't even— I'm already questioning this thing's existence as it is. I had this game as a kid, and I don't remember it being anything special. I've never beaten it, so I'm not really sure why this needed to be a thing. But before we get to that, let's take a look at this movie that was so important it had to get its very own game.
Here you go. Take good care of him. I love him, I love him, I love him.
Oh my fucking god, kill me. There's just nothing of value here. I mean, you can criticize the theatrical movie how you want. It's a bad representation of this franchise for sure, but it has things to admire and remember about it. The animation is pretty nice looking, and it did give us a few notable memes.
We've got to have money.
But this? Oh no, there's just nothing. And just like the first movie, it's a really bad representation of the IP, but in the exact opposite way. This was the first Tom and Jerry product that Hanna-Barbera had worked on in years, and sadly ended up being their final animated collaboration as Hanna died that March. They aimed to recapture the feeling of the original shorts they made over 50 years ago. While the theatrical film doesn't bother to do that at all, Magic Ring does, but in a way where it feels like a shallow imitation that doesn't understand its source material. See, classic Tom and Jerry is good, really good, but that's because it's a sum of all its parts. One of Tom and Jerry's main components is its slapstick, which, yeah, Magic Ring has that too, but even that's weak. Here's two instances of slapstick from each, so let's compare why the original works and why Magic Ring doesn't. Here's Magic Ring to start. I mean, for me personally, and I know humor is heavily subjective, but this wasn't funny. Yeah, I like this face he's got on here, but does that even really count? Now let's look at how classic Tom and Jerry does its slapstick. I mean, wow, what a difference. It hits a lot of the same beats, but it's how it hits them that works. First off, something interesting is always happening, even if it's just buildup, usually communicated through the finesse of the animation and the sound design. It also doesn't stop and take a breather after the actual slapstick part hits, which Magic Ring does. But there's a main component that Magic Ring is missing. Sound design! Sound design is an aspect that I think is greatly overlooked in any form of mixed media. Even though this clip doesn't use Hanna's iconic yell, every sound effect used has a nice, punchy aspect to it that makes it stick out in my mind a little. Meanwhile, Magic Ring is just bland in comparison. I'm gonna be honest, I had to watch this 5 times for this review because it's just so unmemorable. But you know, that's okay. As long as it's not harmful, there's no real issue with it being made for kids. But I feel like showing this to a Tom and Jerry fan isn't a good idea. So this thing functions as a bit of a reboot, meaning that everything you thought you knew about these familiar characters
are out the window.
It's so jarring because you see pre-established characters acting outside of their personalities and relationships. Like right here, why is Jerry getting tricked by Tom so easily? Isn't that backwards? Here's the beginning of that obnoxious pet shop scene from earlier.
I don't know how easy it'll be to find you a home with that big bump on your head, but you are going to love all your new friends.
What's the matter, Nibbles? Cat got your tongue?
Aren't you two related? Like, literally related?
Here's a new friend for you, sweetie pie.
Well, what do we have here?
What did I just say?
Relax, Your Highness. We'll get back to you as soon as we're done talking to our buddy Nibbles over here.
Yeah, talking.
Make a break for it, King!
I'm not an incel. My internet friends called me king, see?
This whole thing is so mean-spirited. Every character is an asshole. It's really loud, too. It's just so grating to sit through. Please don't let this game be anything like this.
This is the worst.
Okay, it's not that bad. Honestly, I find this game's OST to be slightly above average. There's nothing really wrong with the compositions, but a few songs have some sour notes in them, which I think stems from not understanding the GBA sound chip and sound compression correctly. I may not be wording that properly, I'm not a sound guy, but what I'm trying to say is it sounds rushed, which is a sign of things to come. There's not much to this game. There's a password option since the save battery wasn't included. No surprise there, as I remember this being a budget GBA title I picked up for under $20. So let's start this adventure out as Jerry, since I don't see playing as Tom being the best idea. As you can see, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. You've got hazards to avoid and enemies to fight. Take everyone out and you can move on to the next screen. And I'm pretty sure this is not a good one. I gotta be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of games because they always seem to stack odds against the player. Although that could be because I've mainly played arcade titles. So I'm not the best point of reference for this. I've played Golden Axe, Final Fight, and Knights of the Round before, but I dragged out my Wii U and did a playthrough of Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom before writing, so I could have a better point of reference. That game has multiple classes, different moves for each character, and branching paths within stages, meaning that there's lots of replayability, as well as being a faithful interpretation of its source material. It is a bit unfair to compare an arcade game to something on GBA, but how does Tom and Jerry fare? Yeah, I'm not gonna screw around, there's literally no contest. For starters, there's almost no variety. Outside of a few instances, you're gonna be fighting the same red and gray cats for 50% of the game. Your standard unarmed attack is pathetic, so your only real option is to use weapons. And this is something I think the game does decently by incorporating Tom and Jerry's slapstick into its gameplay. Sad part is, there's not a lot of them. Again, lack of variety, but this is a budget game. There's not even any special moves or anything. You'd think Jerry would be able to fire a magic bolt from the ring, but nope. The paw attack is all you get. For this first stage, you'll start out in the living room and make your way into the kitchen, where you'll fight the first boss. Upon defeat, she'll drop a newspaper telling you about the great Droopy, and then you'll have to head back to the living room, which is now loaded with a bunch of shit you have to dodge. Just skip it. There's no point in dragging this section out. All it does is drain your resources, and none of the enemies drop health here. After that, you'll be in the basement, where, again, you just have to beat everybody and slowly make your way right. Now, you've probably noticed something. This looks almost nothing like Magic Ring. And you'd be 100% correct. Other than loosely following the plot of the movie, as in Jerry has a ring on his head, all of the locations and enemy designs are ripped right out of the classic Tom and Jerry era. And honestly, that's a big plus. For as average as this game is, everything looks really nice. The sprite work isn't amazing or anything, but it has this quality to it that very closely matches the original painted backgrounds. That's a nice touch. Next up is the park. The manual states that neither Tom nor Jerry knows what's beyond the park, so I guess that means we're finally getting somewhere. Here you'll run into Jerry's Uncle Pecos. If you're playing as Jerry, he'll help you out, but if you're Tom, his attacks will hurt you. Although it doesn't seem like he actively seeks you out, he's just kind of there.
That's the hard part right in there, and then next to you.
The boss here is this bird that shits out eggs. Once he's out of here, Jerry will head to the sewers. What the fuck? After that, it's time for Droopy's Magic Shop. Are we at the end of the game already? This screen is annoying the first time you get here. It's loaded with these cat robots that utilize some compressed voice clips. You know, those classic Game Boy Advance voice clips. It's pretty annoying, and it never really stops because there's so many of them. They're not super difficult, but their charging attack is kind of irritating. The next part is less annoying than it looks. All you need to do is keep zigzagging up and down to avoid the pattern. Droopy steals the ring, and now you've got to fight against it. Oh look, he's got magic bolts. You know, this would be a lot cooler if I could do that. This boss sucks a lot, and it's the first time this game will really challenge you. In order to defeat Droopy, you have to attack the crystal balls floating around him, but you're only able to damage the colored one. And this is where you realize how much your unarmed attack really sucks. The hitbox on it is so tiny, it's very difficult to line yourself up properly, since they're rotating and Droopy is constantly dragging them away from you. The magic ring also shoots off ice bolts and intervals that will freeze you with no way to speed up the recovery animation. It sounds like the interval part would make it easy to dodge, but no. I eventually understood it, but it's only because I played through this 3 times. The ice bolt's hitbox is ridiculously huge, so the only way to actively avoid it is to get past it before Droopy fires it, so you're on the other side of the direction he's firing. Even once you understand this, it's not easy. So naturally, I died here, which means I get to talk about the game's continue screen. Which is unironically one of the best I've ever seen. Okay, you know how AVGN complains how passwords function in a lot of older titles?
You can save the game, but you have to make it back alive to the exit, return to the house, and go to the poster where you can put the piece of the tickets in a safe place. Then it gives you a password, but after you die, it doesn't continue. Every time you die, you have to enter the password. It shouldn't make you do that!
He's right. They absolutely shouldn't. Password systems exist so that you can have a save function for a game without using a save battery, meaning you should only use them when you want to turn your console off. And this game totally nails that. It has infinite continues, and if you press continue on the game over screen, it restarts you at full health in the very room where you died, meaning it's very forgiving in that aspect. You can get a password at any time by pressing start, and there's one for every single room. This surprised me because while the game isn't that great, they really don't give you a lame excuse to not complete it. The only thing really stopping you is you. I feel like enough games aren't designed like this personally. Like, I've already paid for the game, just make it so I can see everything. That's not to say a game can't be unforgiving. If you want to make a brutally difficult game, that's totally fine, but I don't think you should try to Trojan horse concepts like that onto unsuspecting players that have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Make difficulty through legitimate challenge, not unfairness. It's so surprising to find a licensed game, while not very good, isn't just trying to take your money and run. I'm hoping to explore more with this sentiment, honestly. When you defeat Droopy, he'll use the magic ring to swap your bodies and then teleport away. So from here on out, we're going to be playing as Tom. Why? What is the point? Like, if I wanted to play as Tom, I would have picked him at the beginning. This seems like kind of a lame way to give the game false variety, especially since, other than Tom being taller, he plays the exact same way Jerry does. There's no difference. Either way, Tom heads into the alleyway, which is loaded with cats. This is actually one of the better levels in the game thanks to the watermelon item, which hits multiple enemies on its arc. Oh hey, it's that dog with the Scottish accent. In the movie, he shows up at the front desk for Droopy's shop. Is he like a boss or something? Oh, I guess not. And honestly, you're gonna be thankful he's so easy, because this level sucks. This is easily the worst part of the game, and it was the first time I realized how rushed this was. So your main goal is to get to the top of this building that's being constructed, flip this switch, and head out the gate at the bottom. You've got a few obstacles to worry about. This dog here will shove you off if he's not asleep when you jump on the platform, and there's bricks falling down that for some reason become a weapon you can pick up on the ground floor. Why? There's no enemies in this stage to use them on. By the time you'll have beaten the first two, you won't really have even gotten that far in the level yet to actually see them. I swear, no matter what you're doing, no matter how you time it, as long as you're climbing this building, you're always getting smacked with something. Worst part is, there's no way to recover health in this stage. Most stages will have an item that looks like this, which is essentially a super cheese or a super fish, which by pressing L will give you all of your health back. But the one stage that would really be useful in, it's not here. But you know what, that's fine. I mean, it's still garbage, but everything works, right? This is unacceptable. So when you jump while holding up on the D-pad, it allows you to jump on the top of background objects. I never bothered to mention it before because it's not really something you need to do. You can pretty much complete the whole game without ever knowing this is a thing. Now the way this building works is by what I can only assume is a combination of both foreground and background objects, meaning that you have to use specific jumps to land on different platforms. And there's absolutely nothing that tells you which jump is required for which platform. It's also never used in the game before or after this. Oh, also, yeah, it literally doesn't even work when it's supposed to. Bro, what the fuck is this collision? Once you hit the switch, you have to work your way back down, which is a lot easier, and then just head out the gate. You can't just jump off the building because these birds will attack you, but that's kind of it. All the difficulty in this stage comes from this building not being programmed correctly. And you know what? I gotta be honest. I hate the fact that it's like this, and I hate the fact that I have to hate this, because I can tell they were trying to do something kind of cool here, but it didn't pan out because they clearly were not given enough time. This whole stage reeks of not being developed long enough. There's cool ideas here, there's unique assets here, but they're all kind of cobbled together in a way that they don't quite fit, but you can tell what they were going for. Everything here makes sense for the most part, but it's just not polished correctly. This is why I hate when game companies don't get enough time or money or resources to have a fully realized vision. Yes, this is a budget game. Yes, it's not that great, but I can see aspects of it where they're actually trying and it ends up not being able to be done correctly, very likely due to budgetary reasons. So, sadly, despite its ambition, this is the worst level in the game. The semi-final level is the circus, which I'm gonna explain later because it literally takes like 15 seconds to clear it. It'll make sense later, just trust me. And now, we're at the final boss. Yes, really, this is the very last screen of the game. And oh look, it's the same boss arena we fought Droopy in before. But thankfully, the boss fight itself is not recycled. There's no cutscene before this, and also for some reason the music plays a bit late. It appears the magic ring has allowed Jerry to float, and you need to take out this genie. He's not hard to beat since you can basically go anywhere on the screen now. This is actually pretty fun. It's mindless and super easy, but I don't know, it's just satisfying to do. Once he's taken care of, you win. Tom and Jerry get placed back in their respective bodies, proceed to beat the shit out of each other, and then the credits roll. This is pretty much all this game has to offer, but there's some odds and ends to go over. For starters, choosing the other character barely provides a unique experience. You still play through all the exact same stages, and all that changes is the order of the two character-specific ones, and the character you choose to control will be during the first half of the game, and then you'll swap characters halfway through. Only 2 of the cutscenes have differences in them, and it's literally 1 frame. This game has no unlockables. Well, that's disappointing, but I wasn't expecting much since it's so cheap and was clearly rushed out the door. While I was grabbing the OST for this game to use in this video, I discovered that, for some reason, the PAL release of this game has some different music. It's also more polished too. The spiders have a changed sprite wall on the wall that looks much better, and the circus level actually plays like it's supposed to. See, in the US release, this monkey at the end doesn't seem to block you, but in the PAL release he does. Meaning you can't just beat the stage by getting shot up to the tightrope and then walking to the right. You have to actually exit on the ground level and dodge the clowns. Finally, the music for the genie fight starts when it's supposed to, in addition to being one of the tracks they changed. I wouldn't recommend playing this game in any capacity, but if you must play it, the PAL release is the way to go. There's only one final thing to go over, and that's the password system. See, I noticed that there's more passwords than stages listed on game FAQs, so I wanted to make sure something funky wasn't going on. Well, turns out there's just 2 passwords that correspond to the kitchen for some reason. This makes little sense because you'll never get this password during normal gameplay, so I played the game for a bit to make sure there really was no difference, like this wasn't an incomplete version of the stage or something like that. You know, this seems a little harder than when I played before, but why? Am I crazy? I got curious, so I put in the normal password for the kitchen and noticed the exact same difficulty spike. So I checked my footage, and it was in that moment that I finally understood why I never beat this game as a kid. So yeah, apparently when you use a password, it makes the health power-ups recover less health. And I don't mean like a small reduction. They only recover 1 bar compared to the 3 they normally do. Why? It's not like these are unique passwords or anything. They're the standard ones you receive when playing through the game. So why do they do this? I guess it's kind of nice because it does provide replayability since it's possible to enter a password that starts right at the very first cutscene, but what the hell, there's 0 mention of this anywhere both online and in the manual. Isn't this game aimed at kids? How do you expect them to complete this when you make the game harder? I mean, yeah, it's not long, but I'm an adult, and again, I couldn't beat this as a kid because I thought it was too hard. And I'm pretty sure this password garbage is the exact reason why. And with that, I'm gonna give Tom and Jerry and the Magic Ring for Game Boy Advance a 4 out of 10. This thing has absolutely no reason to exist. There's a few admirable qualities to it, but the negatives far outweigh them. There's 3 other Tom and Jerry games on Game Boy Advance as well as a Power Stone clone for consoles, so you're better off looking at those. I could have never revisited this and probably would have been better off. If you like this video, please leave me one down below, and if you want to be here for my next one, subscribe. See you next time.